All right. So hey, thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it. I know that just from your intros, there's a lot of experience in this meeting, so I appreciate it. I have about 30 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I just don't want to hold anybody after 5 here on the East Coast. So, like I said, my name is Jim Bolen. I'm the director of the Butler County Emergency Management Agency. If you're unfamiliar where that's at, we are directly between Cincinnati and Dayton. So Hamilton County is city of Cincinnati, Montgomery County is city of Dayton, and we sit right there in the middle of it. I've been with the agency since 16. I've been on the incident management team since 2012. I've got 11 deployments across the training, regional, and national levels. And then I've served kind of as a plane section chief. That's where I cut my teeth with the team. Then transitioned more into that loafer and PIO role. And then most recently here, stepped up to the IC role as we had some team leadership leave. The Butler County Incident Management Team, we're a Type 3 team founded in 2010 by former director of my agency, Mr. Jeff Galloway, came out of Florida, then Tennessee, and then ultimately landed here in Butler County. We've got about a 45-person multidisciplinary team, public works, fire, law enforcement, hospitals, and other miscellaneous government. We've got about 50 events and deployments that we've done kind of over our history. Most notably, probably Hurricane Sandy in 2012, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Ian, Baltimore for the civil unrest in 2015, and then again for the snow in early 2016. So, team's pretty well seasoned. We again have had people, I have 11 deployments with the team, and we have people that are probably more closer to 16, 18 deployments with the team over those years. So we were asked to deploy to the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment. And a little bit of background, I'm sure you guys have seen this. It's been on the news, pretty much, around the clock when it happened, and then it kind of blew up again. A few months later, it became a very political talking point for a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But the background of the event is about Friday, February 3rd at about 2010 hours. There's a train that's going through Ohio, and underneath of it, there's some fire and sparks that are kind of indicating that we have some sort of wheel bearing failure. And these sparks and flames are photographed by a bystander as the train crosses one of the train crossings in that area. And about 45 minutes later, roughly, the 149 car train derails. 40 cars of the train derail. We have 11 hazardous materials with 5 cars that are containing vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is going to be the main chemical that we have that we deal with throughout the entire issue. It's going to be the car that presents the most challenges to us as we move forward. When we got first responders kind of moving into that area, they respond that evening, and they will respond for probably about the next 36 hours with very limited relief. This is an area I want to show you. So this is East Palestine, Ohio. A couple things to point out. You can see in the upper right-hand corner there, that's the Ohio-Pennsylvania line. The incident's going to occur about 100 yards away from that line. And so it's going to occur on the eastern side of the town in an area that's primarily industrial. There's some oil company locations there. There's also some chemical facilities that are kind of in that area, but it's primarily industrial with very little residential in that immediate area. I also went ahead and called out the East Palestine Fire Department, so you can see that. It's the bottom call out there. And then the school complex, and we'll talk about that school complex and why that's important as we move forward. So as this event is unfolding, we have the 40 cars off the rail, 11 cars containing those hazardous materials. 1 mile of voluntary evacuation is put in place, and that 1 mile voluntary evacuation is not heeded by most of the population. There's a lot of folks that do leave. I don't want to say that that there wasn't, but a lot of folks have decided, at least in this initial phase, that they're going to go ahead and stick it out. Saturday, February 4th rolls around, and the fire suppression and hazmat response is going to continue into this area. And for your understanding, fire departments in this area traditionally are either volunteer or part-time. There are a couple full-time fire departments in this area, but primarily we're dealing with part-time fire departments that may have full-time administration, but generally speaking, the firefighters themselves are going to be part-timers. We do have some hazmat resources in the area, though they are limited. We're dealing with a type 2 hazmat team kind of in that region that supports them. And then there's some other type 3 and untyped hazmat resources that are in that area. So at about 1,600 hours, our team was notified and activated through what we call Ohio IMAC. And so an example, you guys are probably familiar with EMAC in the IMT world, and that's how a lot of resources move. EMAC is that state-to-state aid. IMAC is something in Ohio. I'm sure other states have other similar programs, but IMAC is an intra-state aid. Instead of requiring the request and approval of the governors of the states that are requesting and providing aid, we're able to do direct requests or through the standing emergency response plans. So in Ohio, we have the fire chief's emergency response plan, as well as the police chief's emergency response plan. And then we can do the direct request just by phone call or email to those resources. And that allows us to really immediately deploy those resources into the affected area. Typically, this deployment is limited. We're talking about 8 to 12 hours, but there is the possibility under IMAC that we can do that extended duration. And just to kind of tell you guys how quickly we were able to mobilize this team, this happened. This team was, sorry, keep hitting buttons. So this event happened Friday at roughly 9 o'clock. We were tracking on it, but we had no request for resources. On February 4th, we received a call at 1 o'clock saying, hey, would you be able to go? We had a team conference call at 2 o'clock, determined we were able to go ahead and put a team together that could deploy for a couple of days. And by 4 o'clock, we were approved through IMAC and on the road to East Palestine. So for us, it's approximately a 7.5 hour drive to get up there, kind of as we move through Ohio, especially with the resources that we were bringing. We do have a 40-foot command trailer that we bring with us. We also have a 36-foot box truck that we bring with us to carry resources, as well as a bunch of staff vehicles and other first responder vehicles that we bring up. And so we took pretty much 7.5 hours to get up there to East Palestine and immediately went to bed. We sent a team to the command post with our incident commander for the event, or what we would call in our world, our incident management team leader. We sent our team leader to the incident command post to talk to the on-scene incident commander, who is the East Palestine fire chief, Keith Drabeck, I believe is his name. And we went ahead and identified, kind of what our role was going to be. We went to bed at a hotel and started it the next day at about 0600 hours. We met at the incident command post for the morning briefings. So the conditions that we kind of identified here at 0600, the conditions that we saw at 0600, we've had a response that's at this point been going on for approximately 36 hours. The crews are being replaced as possible, but fatigue is setting in. Most of these folks have been engaged on this incident either 12 to 24 hours at that point, or it had 18 hours before that, had a couple hours off, and then were re-engaged in that area. The East Palestine, Ohio is a smaller community. It's kind of a Rust Belt community that we see in this area. The primary industry for a long time was clay and pottery. It has really good clay out that area. So it's a heavy pottery community, but that has pretty much gone away. And most of this area is somewhat economically depressed. But there is some employers that are around there that are supporting that group. The town it's a small town in Ohio. The acting city manager left about a week before this occurred, or excuse me, the city manager left East Palestine about a week before this occurred. And so they appointed the fiscal officer as the acting city manager about 3 days before this event occurred. Fire chief is the only full-time employee of the fire department. All others are part-time. There may be some volunteer element to that, but primarily most of those folks are going to be part-timers. There's a small police department, a couple officers on the road, and a police chief. Columbiana County Sheriff's Office is assisting, and the Columbiana County Undersheriff, she would be there at the incident command post pretty much the entire time. We'll kind of talk about her a little bit later. She did a great job, but kind of got embroiled in some controversy at the end. The mayor's engaged. He is at the incident command post. It's located in East Palestine's only fire department. It's a small department. I'll show it to you and show you some of the pictures of how many people we had loaded up in there. And then Columbiana County EMA, they engaged late, but they were involved at that point at 600 hours. We also have several state, regional, national, private NGOs that are engaged at this point. Ohio EPA and US EPA have been engaged from the beginning. Start contractors through Tetra Tech that are contracted with the US EPA on the Superfund Technical Assistance Program. They're there. Norfolk Southern was engaged almost immediately as well. They also have their environmental contractors on scene. We have members of the Federal Railroad Administration and some other federal resources. NTSB is responding, but not yet on scene. We were told that they have a tendency to wait until the fire's out before they really even get on scene and start assisting, just because their role is going to be limited with the amount of fire and flames that we have. And then we have the local state and health department. They were assisting as well. So here's the sit rep. So again, 11 hazardous materials cars that are overturned, 5 containing that vinyl chloride. We have heavy fire that's impinging on some of the derailed cars, and the fire is being fed by some of the hazardous materials that are then leaking out of those containers. We also have some hazardous materials that released into nearby rivers and streams, and those are dammed and diked by the environmental contractors, and they're trying to pull product out of those waterways as well. The response is pretty limited, right? It's fire suppression, removal of the train cars. The railroad is working to move all of the cars that were still upright or able to be moved by crane outside of the fire area. They're moving those and getting them out of the area so we have places to work. And the law enforcement through the Columbiana County Sheriff's Office, the undersheriff, is really leading this process to go door to door in this community within this 1 mile exclusion zone and identify who's still there, what needs they have, and how we can kind of maybe talk them out of staying in the area. So here's the East Palestine Fire Department. As you can see, 3 bays. There's a chief's office. There may be a small day room, but it's pretty limited. And so here you can see, I mean, we have probably, this picture doesn't do it justice, but we probably have at any given time about 100 people or so in this 3-bay firehouse. Limited workspace, limited area to move around. No real meeting rooms. There's one kind of attached to this off to the side is the police department, and there's one kind of duty or roll call room that we have to do meetings, but it's not sufficient for what we need. And so here's the flame conditions. So you can see it's pretty substantial, even 36 hours into the fire, with the flame being fed by those tank cars that are still releasing some of the flammable product that we have on site. Here's a video. Hopefully this works. Is it moving for you guys? Yeah. So you can see pretty substantial fire. I mean, this is taken sometime in the late morning. So I mean, it's pretty early, but it's hard to tell when you're looking right at that fire. Pretty substantial flames, really engulfing this and kind of limiting what we're able to do. You'll notice those with a fire background, you'll notice there's not a lot of direct attack on that flame. There is some concern about washing product off into the rivers and streams. And so they're just trying to kind of keep these areas cool. Like I said, a lot of fuel infrastructure in this area. So they're trying to work to keep that cool and kind of keep those flames from impinging upon the area. So our team was, after the morning 0600 briefing, we were kind of given three objectives to support the incident commander on. The first was to assess, order, and assign hazmat resources under the direction of the incident commander. So like I said, through the Ohio Interstate Mutual Aid Compact, that IMAC program, we're able to move resources. This isn't limited to just fire and law enforcement resources. We can bring really any government-owned resource to bear against any emergency at any time. So we were able to leverage those partnerships and identify hazmat resources from across the state to bring them in and identify, kind of what their role would be, and in conjunction with the orders of the incident commander. We also assisted in the planning for hazmat response to begin Monday, February 6th. The thought was, as these flames kind of continued throughout the day on February 5th, February 6th would kind of lead us to that point where we could actually make some entry into that area and do what we could to kind of, the idea was we were going to tap those train cars and drain them into areas. And we were going to be able to do that on Monday, February 6th, as we were told. And then we were going to coordinate the response efforts against, amongst all rescue partners. This was a large response. Again, a lot of volunteer fire companies, a lot of part-time fire companies, very little full-time firefighters were assigned to this incident. So we were going to try and bring kind of all those resources to bear. So on February 5th, from about 0600 to about 1630, we did our normal routine IMT activities. We tried to put structure to the chaos. We tried to put order to the chaos, and we really struggled. We had a couple challenges. One, we had no unified meeting schedule. We had no way of getting people all across the response into this unified meeting schedule where we could bring everybody together and share that information. There were briefings that we would have that we would participate in, but we were really just trying to untangle the response as we kind of made it through that first 12 hours that we were dealing with. We also had an ICP that was too small. We had a lot of compartmentalization and information silos, and I'll explain how that kind of bared out as we get throughout the later part of the event. We had a lot of conflicting stories from different elements, and we had a really hard time locating key players, not just from Norfolk Southern, fire department, police department, but also city administration and other partners that we were working with, US EPA, Ohio EPA. And so about 1630 hours, we had a conversation, and it kind of went like this. It went to me going to the gentleman who was working as a plan section chief. And I said, hey, have you seen anybody from Norfolk Southern, East Palestine Fire, East Palestine Police, US EPA, or Ohio EPA in the past 3 hours? And we all kind of looked around and realized that none of us had talked to any person I listed in the past 3 hours. And my plane section chief goes, no, I really haven't. I said, what don't we know? What is happening that we're not being brought in on? And so our incident commander that was working that event, he took our plane section chief and he walked over. I'm going to go back to the map. Can you guys see my cursor on the screen? Okay, so here's the fire department, and kind of just to the left of where it says 165, and right in that area is where the East Palestine administration building is. And so like we talked about, the ICP was too small. Norfolk Southern was one of the first to really move out into a space that was their own and kind of set up shop in a different area. The other spot that was picked was a lot of the East Palestine decision makers moved to the East Palestine administration building. And it's just a small nondescript building on a small town main street. That's really all it is. And so they went in there and they were starting to talk. So IC went in and had a conversation. Again, you can see what our incident command post looks like. It's obviously hard to do any work in this area. It's hard to find a seat. Lots of people, lots of noise, and so no wonder these people left out. But we sent our incident commander and our plane section chief in. They started talking to Norfolk Southern primarily, but also East Palestine folks. And the reported conditions that we had was that the fire was controlled, there was limited risk of detonation, and that the evacuation was voluntary. And what we figured out was these 5 tank cars of vinyl chloride that we knew existed and knew were experiencing some issues, were also experiencing more issues than we initially anticipated, and I think even more so than Norfolk Southern anticipated. And so the actual manufacturer of the product reached out to Norfolk Southern and said, "Hey, here's the deal with the 5 tank cars of vinyl chloride. When they are upright, sitting on their wheels, we know what they're going to do. But as heat is applied, they're going to start to polymerize. They're going to start to form these long chain molecules in the product. And if the product is on its wheels, we know that the inhibitor is going to keep that from happening. If it's on its side, what's likely going to happen is that polymer chain reaction is going to occur, and it's likely going to plug up the pressure relief valve that's in that structure. And with that, you're going to see, if that fire is to continue to be applied to that outside of that train car, you're going to see a hockey stick curve that leads to a levee. So boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. This is going to be obviously bad news for everybody that's within a mile of that area, and we need to make that evacuation mandatory. So we did that. So we had the briefing at about 800 hours or 2000 hours, excuse me, with our team. Said, "Hey, here's the deal. Here's all the information that we have from the incident commander and plane section chief. Here's what we have. We are going to be in a mandatory evacuation zone." The incident command post was just under 1 mile away, and not safe for us to be operating out of that. And so we had to identify a new incident command post and demobilize the current one and move into the new one within the next 2 to 3 hours. We knew we had at least 8 hours before we would reach any temperature threshold that would cause us issues, but it was something we needed to move. We needed to make happen. Now, this event happened on February 3rd. The governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, found out that this was going to be a mandatory evacuation in the state. He found out at about 2000 hours. He, by all accounts, thought that everything was okay. Everything that he was being told was saying that this was under control. We had these changing conditions, and he gets told, "Hey, we're going to evacuate this area, and we're going to move these folks out." So he activates the National Guard, the Ohio National Guard, as well as the what we call the Ready Reserve, which is Ohio State Patrol, and they mobilize and descend into East Palestine, Ohio, to go door to door to help people evacuate out of this area. We do have a Red Cross shelter that's set up. It's set up at the East Palestine Middle School. The middle school is attached to the high school by one hallway, and then across the road from that is East Palestine Elementary. So at about 21:30, I get a call from my incident commander, and said, "Hey, will you go recon a new spot? Go to the high school, see if it'll work, and then call us back." So we go there. The high school is beautiful. It's a brand new high school. Has great facilities. Has a bunch of open classrooms. Has a cafeteria that's built for adults, really. Has a gym that we can use to work out of, as well as a library and a bunch of other classrooms. And I tell the incident commander for the entire incident, I said, "Hey, the high school is where we want to go." And he said, "Well, we want to go to the elementary school." Now, the elementary school in East Palestine was built probably in the 70s. It's immediately across the street from the high school. It's in the middle school complex. There's about 13 doors on that facility. People can walk in on the street. It's also built for kindergartners. And so I'll show you some pictures of this, but probably the most insubordinate I've ever been in my life was me talking to these folks, and I'm saying, "You don't want to go to the elementary school. You don't want to go to the elementary school." And they said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Well, one, it's built for people that are 3 foot tall. And I've seen everybody on our team. There's nobody that's going to fit into that classroom." I said, "Second off, there's no way for us to secure it. And people who are at the middle school at the shelter, they are walking over. I've literally been approached 5 times by these folks.
They were walking through, and they are asking, hey, what's going on? What's happening? What are you guys doing about it? So we really want to go to this high school. It has all the technology, the Wi-Fi, has connectivity, everything we need. We really want to go to this high school. And they eventually said, no, we're going to elementary school. And I got told that that's how it's going to happen. Well, the first time that I walked into the school was I walked in through the gymnasium. And it's straight out of the movie Hoosiers. If you've ever seen the movie Hoosiers, it's a small Midwest Ohio gym. And it echoes, and it's terrible, and it's loud. And the first thought I had was, man, I hope nobody does a press conference in this gym. So hold that idea. We'll talk about that later. So we go ahead and we activate the elementary school as our new instant command post. We set up all our resources. And then I go off duty. I was actually demoted on Tuesday. We had a bunch of resources come up and kind of, we sent a bunch of resources out Saturday. We had another group of responders that were going to come up on Monday. And so I was part of the group that was getting sent home. All told, we probably had about 20 people on the SenseNet, but at no time did we ever have more than 15, I would say, from a team size perspective. So here's an example. This is us. This gentleman right here, his name is Randy Hannafin. He's a fire chief for Westchester Fire Department, which is one of the larger fire departments that we have in there. He's also former International Association of Fire Executives or Fire Chiefs. He's president, immediate past president for the U.S. He's heavily involved. He's a professor. He's actually got a PhD. Teaches out of UC, University of Cincinnati. Sorry, you guys probably don't know what UC is for us, but UC is University of Cincinnati. He's very well respected in the field. And he was kind of the one coordinating all the hazmat resources for it. They are currently, at this point in time, looking at the map, identifying where we're going to move resources, kind of what does the move of the instant command post look like. Here's the video. It's not video, but it's this is the overhead that we had the public safety director for the state of Ohio come in, and he flew through the area and was able to capture this image. And then here's the FLIR of that train car fire still going on. And again, this is this is several days into the event that we have this major fireball still happening. So we move into our East Palestine elementary school, and you can see there's Chief Hannafin sitting in a kid's chair, working at a small desk. The nice thing is he's got a place he can sit back, he can read in the little footnote back there, but really not great for us. So as you guys know, safety with the IMT is always important. And so because I was traveling home and I was traveling alone, I went ahead and took 8 hours off to make sure that I was able to drive back home at the end of my shift. And so I arrived a little bit later than most of the team. I got there at 9:30. Most of the team was there between 6 and 7. When I arrived, the governor of Ohio was in a meeting with the operations staff. And this was a private meeting. This is, nobody can verify this other than the folks that were in the room, but I will share it with you. The governor, when he arrived, looked at the Ohio National Guard, was talking with them, and he talked with the civil support team that was doing the modeling for the what we call the vent and blow when those cars were detonated, those train cars were detonated. And so the civil support team said, hey, we ran the plume modeling, and it's telling us we need a 15-mile evacuation zone. And the rest of the group, the contractors that were brought in by Norfolk Southern, came in and said, hey, we did the modeling. It's saying 1 mile. I don't know where we're getting 15 miles, but we have 1 mile as our evacuation area, and our plume modeling is showing that. And they went back and forth. The civil support team fighting for this 15 to 18 mile evacuation area. The governor's upset. He's not happy. He's yelling at a lot of people. And he said, I need to know, at this point, if we're going more than a mile, we're impacting the state of Pennsylvania. So he leaves the room. He calls the governor of Pennsylvania, He flies in, and they have this press conference sometime around noon. And we kind of left this operations meeting, and everybody kind of went their own way. And we were looking to detonate this cars, probably around that 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock range. The governor was going to do a press conference before. We were going to do the detonation, and then he was going to do a press conference afterwards. But after this meeting, the governor was like, "We're not detonating this until we have firm understanding of how far we need to evacuate." So everybody kind of goes back to their areas. And one of the things I predicted was, hey, we have these small classrooms. We're not going to get a large group of people working together. And so in lieu of that, what happens? Everybody kind of segments and compartmentalizes and goes to their own area. So if you walk down the hallway, you have a room full of civil support Ohio National Guard folks. The next room is a bunch of Norfolk Southern folks. Next room is our IMT folks. Next room is our fire department folks. Next room is our police department folks. And so we were completely compartmentalized and segmented. And our team was trying to manage that, but it wasn't working, frankly. No one wanted to listen to us. We were simply only brought in to manage the hazmat resources. So that's what we did. So a couple hours later, civil support team comes out and says, we agree with the contractors that this is a 1 mile exclusion zone. And when asked what happened, apparently instead of using vinyl chloride as the chemical, they used the standard phosgene, which was the generic plume modeling in the system. And that's where they got the 18-mile plume. So this pushes us back, and the detonation of the train cars, the vent and blow, which a vent and blow, I didn't know this, and so most of you probably don't know this. A vent and blow is essentially shotgunning a beer. They pop they put a hole in the bottom, they put a hole in the top. At the same time, they do it with explosives. The chemical runs out and is trapped on ditches on site. And when they did this vent and blow, they pushed it back several hours. It went off about 1640. The governor goes into his press conference at about 1700 hours. Now, why is this a problem? Well, the governor decided that he was going to do his press conference in the gym of the East Palestine Elementary School, the same gym I said, man, I hope nobody ever does press conference in. He does it. He pushes it back to 1700 hours. Well, all the media personalities that were there were hoping to get a video of the conference, package it up, send it to their newsrooms, and then to roll it as footage that they already had. But because it got pushed back to 1700 hours, now they had to go live. And when they went live, one reporter was in the back of the room talking to the camera and saying, the governor's coming up, we're doing the press conference in East Palestine, Ohio. At that point, he starts talking, he's making noise, it's in that echoey gym, it's reverberating, and the adjutant general of the Ohio National Guard walks up to him and says, hey, you gotta be quiet. The reporter says, I'm a reporter, I'm going live, and I don't have to be quiet. And the adjutant general and him got into what looked to be a scuffle, and then he was told, adjutant general told the undersheriff of Columbia County to arrest the reporter. So in the middle of this press conference, a reporter for News Nation is being dragged out and arrested by the Columbia County undersheriff, who had done phenomenal work. I mean, she really coordinated the door-to-door response into this area, helping out people who needed to be evacuated. And unfortunately, she got kind of tied up in it. So here's a picture of the governor in one of his press conferences. I don't know if this was the first or the second. This is our mobile command unit. And so we have about a 40-foot mast that we can put up with a camera. And so you can see we were able to live stream that to our folks outside of the event. And this was actually the safe zone. So there's footage or pictures from national media where people were standing outside looking at the explosion, watching it on our screen outside of our command vehicle. Here's a picture that we took as the after the vent and blow had happened, and then another picture from a little bit further away, and then there's the aerial view that we were able to get. I think we had a drone up at this point. We were able to get this footage. So next day was pretty much the end of our time there. As that fire went out, and I'll show you pictures here. we were able to make access into that area. The vent blow was successful by all accounts. The product that burned up in the fire was safely drained into an area. That area was picked up by an environmental contractor, and we were able to get that out of there. But you can see the devastation from a lot of this. I think we ultimately had 3 cars of vinyl chloride that were really causing the issue. The other 2 had actually drained. There was really no threat, but we really didn't have a way of knowing that at the time. But those 3 cars were, again, close to Blevy to some extent, and the concern was thermal runaway. As the fire continued, eventually we would hit that hockey stick curve where we had that immediate jump. And once we get that immediate jump on this chemical, it wasn't going to be stopped. So a couple consequences of this, and I know I'm running up against the end point here, but we had some organizational failures. We had that information compartmentalization that caused us it caused incredible issues throughout the entire response. We had a lot of silos of information. The information was not being shared freely amongst all the partners. We had a lot of mistakes that were made, especially at the end, across a lot of different response partners. We had a media attention. So when that reporter's arrest occurred, the media's opinion of East Palestine prior to the reporter being arrested was, look at how everybody's coming together. Norfolk Southern took a lot of heat for this event, which to some extent is warranted. But I will tell you that we had the CEO of Norfolk Southern in our command bus at one point. We worked with him on a couple issues as we started coordinating those resources. He was there and engaged and involved, really from February 6th, I would say, February 5th, February 6th. He was really engaged in working with us. But as soon as that reporter was arrested, the media attention went from look at all they're doing to help to what are they trying to hide. And that was furthered by mis, dis, and malinformation that came from a lot of conspiracy theorists all around the area. And then we had a public sentiment change. So, before the reporter's arrest, it was East Palestine strong. That instant command post was fed by the local people bringing in food, the food bank and the local residents bringing in their food. And then this is a quote from a resident, after that event. And she said, "I'm angry at my local government, my county government, my state and federal, because the help that we have received in this township is short of nothing. And I get that she's angry and upset, and I don't want to belittle her experience at all. But I want to tell you that there was a lot of support that was in that area, a lot of food, a lot of shelter resources. Norfolk Southern put people up in hotels that were in that evacuation zone, really from the beginning. There was a lot of support, a lot of federal government resources, a lot of county government resources, a lot of local government resources that were working to support those folks. But the public sentiment changed, pretty significantly, and it's hard to not tie that in some ways to the media attention that we got after that. And the media, again, before the event was, hey, what do you think about how they're doing? And then after that was, the question would be, what do you think about how they're doing? And then people would be like, oh, that's great. And then after that, the media requests were, why do you think they're not doing enough for you? Why, there was a lot of spin that was happening. This is my final slide. So I put this in because it's funny. It's one of those things that you see on incidents, and it's always weird how it comes together. But this gentleman is Phil Clayton. He's he's our incident management team commander, and one of our IMT team leads. But he was a plan section chief for this event. He's also, on his day job, an employee of the State of Ohio Emergency Management Agency. And one of the areas where the residents had to evacuate, they had a calf that had to be bottle fed every so many hours. And so it became aware from the Ohio Department of Agriculture when this farmer called in and said, hey, I got a cow that needs fed. Ohio Department of Ag reached out to Ohio EMA, and they said, hey, we have a resource who had the background, you're working on farms, and family had a farm. And they put in a special request, and so we actually had to go out and bottle feed the cow. So you can get dispatched to a train derailment all you want, but you're always going to end up feeding the cows, it seems like. So, again, I apologize because I think I ran a little bit over, but any questions or comments that I can answer.
Jim, this is Jeff. So I guess one of my questions, and I'll try to be really okay. So you guys were brought in to manage essentially just the hazardous materials resources. So you know, all incidents start and end locally, okay, and then you've got an issue. You've got the PRP, or the potential responsible party, which is the, you know, Norfolk Southern. They're on the hook for paying for it. Then you've got the state EPA, and then you've got federal EPA. Who was managing because they should have been in unified command. If we lived in a perfect world, they should have been in unified command, and the federal on-scene coordinator from EPA should have really been busting a lot of chops to get an incident command organization going. And I trained the EPA for almost 10 years in ICS, so I can bust their chops a lot, and because I still know a lot of them. To me, I guess it just, who was doing the overarching incident management? You guys, one of their best resources, sounds like you kind of got shoved off to the side.
Yeah, and unfortunately that was the case. You know, and one, you know, we're used to that to some extent. And I'm sure you guys have been on IMT deployments where people don't really know who you are or what you do. But you take, you know, the first couple of days, first couple of hours, you start building those relationships, and then after that, rocky start, typically they start trying to put more and more on. And that's historically been kind of our experience. I will tell you that the incident commander was the fire chief, and he would not let it go. And in fact, at one point, he had been up for 36 to 48 hours straight. He really had not had any time to go down, and actually fell because he was just so exhausted, and he had to be removed from the scene, you know, and relieved of command, and said, "Hey, you have to go. We need you in this fight, so you need to go take 8 hours and get some rest and come back." And there was just a real hesitancy to let go. As far as the federal coordinating officer or the US EPA coordinating official, I don't know. I couldn't tell you who that person was. Again, we were brought in under that fire chief's emergency response plan, and we're really limited in our scope. Not that we would have had any issue taking an additional role, but you know, again, that has to be delegated to us. We can't just take it.
Oh, yeah.
I will also tell you, and you know, the Columbiana County EMA director, you know, really struggled with this, and we had some run-ins with her after the fact, months after the event, where she made some comments that one, weren't fair, two, wasn't accurate, and three, you know, weren't really pertinent to what we were dealing with. But she was incredibly overwhelmed. One thing I didn't mention is, you know, we're right by the Pennsylvania line, but this is actually right next to East Palestine, and I don't know how many miles, but would have been within that 18-mile exclusion zone, was Beaver Valley Nuclear Power Plant. So it's right there in that spot, and you know, that was another factor that kind of complicated this, and I think that was one of the reasons why maybe some people were holding on a little bit more than what they should have.
Okay. I'll let you off the hook for that, and I'm not putting you on the hook, but yeah, because this is the whole thing, and I see it across the country, is IMTs and HIMTs are such a great benefit, but there's such a huge disconnect between what an incident management team can do for a jurisdiction that's experiencing an incident and people's understanding and awareness of that resource. And it just gets disconnected. Well, it's still disconnected. And it's such a shame because y'all train and organize and prepare yourselves for doing stuff. And then when it, the bell rings, then, it's like, well, how come we're not, and that's something that the HIMTA, they don't have a marketing person or a marketing organization. And that's one of the things that both Jim and I brought up at the last board meeting. If the association is going to work, and if the 3-tiered preparedness system and incident management teams are going to work, we need to have a very vibrant and aggressive educational outreach to emergency managers. We need to be at every state EM meeting, and somebody needs to be speaking about this, because the time that people find out that, Jim Bolen is alive should not be with smoke in the background. And that's just so unfortunate. And the association really needs to help with that kind of an effort of getting the word out.
Yeah, it does. And I'll tell you, we struggle with that too. We've had some situations where, in Ohio, we were one of 2 incident management teams. We built our own, and the state had one. And the state team became the final. We're the only team in the state at this point. And so, and our former director who started us did a lot of great things, but he had some issues that we are still fighting to some extent as far as the politics in our state. And, this was our first opportunity really going outside of our region to assist and support. And, it's, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. You build these relationships, one event at a time. And I think there were a lot of people who came out of it who were really happy with us and the support that we provided. But again, some people weren't, and we'll just have to continue to build that relationship. I did see in the chat there were 2 questions. So the first was from Michael, who said, thank you for presenting. Thank you for that. Do I have an opinion on whether or not the intelligence branch to reduce the information compartmentalization, for example, would have been helpful to this incident command structure, thinking overall emergency management intelligence, situational awareness on steroids, so to speak, rather than I from a law enforcement perspective? Michael, I think would have. I think really the situational unit is so important, and we rely on it on a day-to-day when we activate our EOC and things like that. It's incredibly important to have that information to make sure that everyone's working off the same sheet of music. I will tell you, there's a lot of people, if you ask this question too, they would say there was a concerted effort to not have a common operating picture on this, because people were withholding information. They had an interest in withholding that information from a shareholder perspective. I will be honest with you, I can't tell you one thing Norfolk Southern did that was wrong that I saw. There's some people who have complained that the vent and blow that they did on these tank cars was not necessary. I will tell you that the manufacturer of the product said, this was an issue, and that's why that decision was made. As far as I know, what I was told, I'm sure that that will be legislated after the fact. But the Norfolk Southern worked with us really well. We had a good relationship with them. But again, I think there were a lot of, on the local side and on the regional side, a lot of folks didn't get their arms around this real quick. And then once they started to get a grasp on it, they didn't want to let go. They didn't want to delegate, and they didn't do that. So situational awareness, whether we do that through a set leader or through an intelligence investigation, that would have been a very beneficial spot. And as Steve said, September 20th was when the presidential declaration was given. At that point, FEMA FCO would have coordinated full Fed response. So
that's so far downstream, though.
Pardon me?
I'm just saying that's so far downstream for something that seems like it should have been maybe queued up a little bit quicker.
Yeah, so, and this is not a Stafford Act deployment. So, and I'm not a FEMA guy, so I can't talk fully to that, but you know, FEMA only has the ability to come in and respond to
Right.
these Stafford Act deployments, the traditional FEMA responses. This was more of this was a CERCLA, you know, super fund response.
Yeah.
And so US EPA is the one who really has jurisdiction on these. And in fact, when FEMA was activated and brought in on this, I think this represented the first non-Stafford Act deployment for FEMA that they had. And I kind of have some, I'm an emergency manager, so I kind of have some opinions on that. One, if you're going to start, you know, giving me jobs that aren't my job, then I need more money, right? I'm not funded to handle what I handle now. If you're going to start throwing extra work on me, then I need more people and more resources. And two, I think, you know, we talk in the IMT world a lot about mission creep. Here's our mission set, let's stick to it. Well, now we have an example where we're legislating in mission creep. We're bringing FEMA into roles and responsibilities that traditionally they haven't held. And again, you know, is FEMA the right agency or organization to respond to this? Yeah, maybe. I mean, they have experience dealing with displaced citizens and, you know, dealing with shelter and mass care. They have experience dealing with, you know, grants and funding available to assist. But again, this is you know, it's kind of a slippery slope to some extent.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I just looked up and I mean, that's what, 6, 7, 8 months down the road and that was probably due to political pressure more than it was actually a square peg in a square hole.
Yeah, it absolutely was political pressure. I was at EMI when all that was happening. Kind of around through that time, I did the EMA Executive Academy out there, and had the opportunity to talk to a lot of folks, and there were a lot of folks that kind of informed my position on it. Because that, you know, if this happened in my county, yeah, I'm going to be involved and I'm going to be doing a lot, but that's more to do with my agency's management of the local emergency planning committee that we have in Ohio. So that's why we're involved. None of this is Stafford Act, you know, stuff. So
Appreciate your insights. Thank you.
no problem.
Jim, this is James Mason. Going back to our 3-tiered preparedness system, any lessons learned as far as the teams being prepared, having equipment? You had the mobile command post and your support trailer, and you talked about issues with having facilities when you got there as far as work locations and that. Any lessons learned on the team's preparedness, supplies, equipment, computers, plotters, and those type things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that we call it our mobile operations center. It's a command trailer, 40-foot, and that was the second deployment, I think, with it. We sent it to Florida for Hurricane Ian, and then we used it in East Palestine. And we did my operations administrator here in my office is the one who really put it together. He did a great job on that. We do include a plotter on that. I think plotters are incredible, even if you just use them for signs and signage. I mean, I think it's incredibly beneficial. But also maps and charts are important as well. We also included, we have a plotter laminator, so we can build it, you know, just in time 215s and print those out and then laminate them immediately. We also started carrying the Starlink satellite for internet. So we run 4 air cards out of that unit. We have a FirstNet, a Verizon, a T-Mobile, and then an AT&T, and then Starlink is our backup. And I will tell you that we've never not had service, even during Hurricane Ian, when we had no cell towers around us, we were able to have cell service. Watching YouTube at night, I mean, that good at cell service. The other thing we transitioned from a lot of trailers. So we used to have a lot of car drawn trailers, 12, 20, 12, 18, 20 foot trailers, enclosed trailers that we would put resources in. And we got away from that and just went with a box truck. So again, I think it's a 36-foot box truck, 26 or 36. I can never remember. I apologize. And then we started using what are called row packs, ROWPACKS. And these row packs are pallets that fold down to about 2 foot tall. And then you can expand them, and that now you have like a cube that you can use to pack. And so every section on our team, planning, finance, logistics, operations, they have their own row pack with all of their equipment that's preloaded. And then from an emergency management perspective, instead of having a trailer that had a bunch of cots and bedding and supplies for sheltering, we stopped, basically buying trailers and putting that stuff on there and leaving it locked up and away. And now it's all in those row packs. So in the event that we have a need for shelter, I can bring my forklift in, lift up those row packs, throw them right in the back of my truck, of my box truck. And then from there, we would take, let's say now we have a deployment, I can go in, I can pick up finance, logistics, operations, planning, throw that all in there. And then our team can come in and throw all of our gear, all of our personal bags that we need when we arrive in Florida, but we don't need in transit. And that unit's been, it's been phenomenal. Eventually, we don't currently have a generator attached to it, but we spec'd it so that we could add one later with grant funding. But that's kind of the approach that we've used, and it's been incredibly helpful for us. Did that answer your question?
Yes. So just as lessons learned. So you identified your problems, like you said, the facilities winding up in the elementary school and that type of stuff. And so trying to think about, okay, if you had a similar type of assignment again, those you've addressed some of the things that you do take along additional.
Yeah, so sorry, my phone's telling me it's about to die, and that's running my Wi-Fi hotspot here. Could you repeat that for me again? I'm sorry.
I was just asking, really, lessons learned, the type of issues that you had. You talked about the facilities, having to work out of the elementary school, and having the support equipment. You talked about the plotters and the printers and those type things. So yeah, just being able to share those lessons learned, so that if somebody else had a similar type deployment, they maybe not have some of the same issues.
Yeah, and I think that's been, one of the things that we really identified early on was when we've been downrange too often and not had what we needed, so we stopped leaving stuff at home. And what happened on a lot of our early deployments was we were told, hey, you're going to run an EOC in an affected county. And so we'd pack like we're going to be in the office, and then we'd get down there and we'd find ourselves in a spot where, now we're on a airfield and we're working on a runway, managing a logistical staging area. And we identified, hey, this is bad for us to not have the resources that we need. If we had everything we have at home, we'd be running this thing like a top. But right now it's, we're struggling. And so we very quickly identified we're not going to leave stuff at home. And so typically, if we have it, we're going to bring it regardless of what conditions we're anticipated to operate in.
Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Good stuff, Jim. That was a phenomenal presentation, and hope you'll continue hopping on with this monthly. You're sure welcome anytime. Any other questions or anything good in the order? And if not, we'll pull the recording and post it and go from there.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. It was excellent.
No problem.
Next time, say absolutely do not put us in this high school. This is the worst place you can possibly put us. Don't do it. Whatever you do, we've got to be in elementary school, and it'll work out right.
Yeah, the reverse psychology for sure. I did throw my email in the chat, jim.bolen@bcohio.gov. More than happy if anybody has any questions. I know Jeff, you mentioned wanting to connect. By all means, reach out, but I'll open it up to anybody that's on the call. If you guys have any questions or you want answers or stuff I couldn't talk about in public, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that because yeah, you definitely have a wealth of good good information that other teams could profit from.
Awesome. Awesome. Wonderful stuff. Everybody sure appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys in May. If you have a topic for June, July, August, let us know. We'll get it scheduled and we'll go from there. Take care. Be safe, everybody.
Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.